Welcome in, college football fans. Everybody pile in here. Let's talk about the big news. Welcome to the First and Long College Football Show. I am your co-host, Marcus. Mason, how are you doing on this fine Wednesday evening?
Man, it seems like we just can't find news these days in college
I know it.
football to talk about.
Slow show today. Slow
Oof,
show.
man. Sometimes it just comes to you. We talked last night about, hey, what are we going to do with the show? Obviously, we got to talk about the championship and what happened in that. Lo and behold, an hour and a half ago, we find out that Nick Saban is going to be retiring. Just about the biggest possible news broke in college football, and when we're actually really blessed to be going live tonight. We were planning on going live regardless, but I'm ready to talk about it. What are the ramifications of this? And first of all, I think we should start with what was Nick Saban's legacy? What will he be remembered as? Obviously, it's the GOAT, but you
I
know,
think it's his 9 Mercedes-Benz dealerships.
maybe so eventually. But where does he go from here? Right? I mean, is he going to run for president? I think he's got a good shot.
No, he is gunning for Tommy Tuberville in that Senate job. That's what
Hey,
he's
he
gunning
probably
for
is.
now. He
That's
probably
only
is.
one more way that he can beat Auburn. The final way.
I'm gonna take them fucking Tigers down with me.
Yeah.
No, you know what? He's the goat. He was the greatest of all time. 6 titles at Alabama. He had another one at LSU. Um, it's huge news. It's big for college football and college football fans alike, and it opens up a lot of doors for conversation because does anybody remember what Alabama was like before he was there? Because it
Yeah.
wasn't very good. It
No.
wasn't very good. Most of my early college football days were not very memorable for the Tide. And ever since Nick Saban has came along, he has took that program under his wing, and ever really since that first year where he went 7-5, he's totally transformed not only the Alabama Crimson Tide but college football alike. This guy, people don't really understand the tentacles that he has around things in college football, and I don't think that's going to change. I mean, we've seen him all over the media spaces this past season, um, and I think he's poised to take over a spot, with ESPN or in that media atmosphere. Don't you think?
Well, and I think that there were a lot of signs if you really kind of go back and look at it. Um, we mentioned the $17 million house in Jupiter, Florida that he purchased in the offseason. We talked about that when it happened and said, this might be a sign. And granted, as the season went along, I started thinking, all right, well, maybe he's going to stick around. He gets a really good recruiting class.
Yeah,
And it I mean, he really, up until like today, it seemed like he was going to stay. They just got two more recruits. I think it was yesterday, but within the past couple of days. So, he really played until the whistle, I guess you could say.
yeah,
But there were signs of that, and then also, with him being on the Pat McAfee show once a week, that seemed to me a very natural transition into ESPN and into the TV space.
hmm
And it was just another point that you could look at and say, well, this was Nick Saban foreshadowing what he is inevitably going to end up doing, probably,
yeah,
or maybe he's I don't want to say auditioning, because who wouldn't want Nick Saban on your show, whether he's good or bad, right? He brings his clout, brings viewers regardless of how good he is, and he's
yeah,
going to be fine in whatever he wants to do in
yeah,
life.
and
He could
he.
be a CEO if he wants.
Yeah, well, and he essentially is. I mean, as I wasn't joking about the car dealerships. He really does own like 9 of those bad boys, and he's about to open up one of the only Ferrari dealerships in America. So that was part of their trip over the summer. See, there's been several things that have led to this, and I don't know if you just mentioned it. I was just reading something, but his $17 million house he bought in Florida.
Hmm.
Um, we said in the offseason, we said there's no way he's buying a $17 million house not to live in it. This
Yeah.
is a retirement home. This is, that's what that is. And lo and behold, it looks like it's going to happen a little bit sooner than we thought. But one of the people that obviously in college football today, besides, Nick Saban and your Dan Lannings and your Kirby Smarts, somebody that has a lot of reach and a lot of voice in the college football atmosphere is Coach Prime and Deion Sanders. And I'm going to read you a quote from X that he posted. He said, "Wow, college football just lost the GOAT to retirement. Wow, I knew it would happen one day soon, but not this soon. The game has changed so much that it chased the GOAT away.
Oh, wow.
Football, let's hold up our mirrors and say honestly what you see."
Hmm.
So that was Coach Prime, Deion Sanders. That was not the Riddler from Batman.
Yeah.
Uh, that was that was a Coach Primeism, is what that was. Um, is he right? Did the game chase away the goat?
I beg to differ. I'd be
Shockingly, I don't agree with Coach Prime.
yeah. I don't think that Nick Saban was definitely like an advocate for everything that has changed in college football since he has been on this run, but he did nothing but adapt. I mean, I don't know that it was he necessarily saw it as anything but another challenge. I don't agree with that, but I do see his point as a head coach in college football. Can you start lobbying for change for head coaches and coaches in general, because they're the ones who are feeling it more than any fan is, more than the players. He's the head coaches and the coaches in general are the ones who are affected. Their lifestyle is affected, and it is very tough on them, but they're paid handsomely to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think the game chased him away. He was just in the playoff. He was just in the 14 playoff. I mean, and let's be honest, it was one of the worst teams he's taken to the playoff.
Yeah.
So I think the game was coming to Nick just as much as it ever was.
Hmm.
So I don't, Alabama just had one of their best recruiting classes ever. They just had their most talented team ever. Now, this is going to open the floodgates a bit because now Alabama, they already had a little bit of an outflux of talent and an influx as well. They brought in players, they lost them, but now they have a whole nother 30-day window, all these players, because their coach was fired. So everything opens right back up. They had extra time after the playoff game. Now it's wide open again. And we'll just have to kind of wait and see you know, how this thing looks. But me and you were talking before the show started. There was some footage that was leaked of Kirby Smart talking to Caleb Downs after the SEC championship game, right?
Yep.
Saying we'll be in touch, right?
Yep.
And,
Yep.
and that's not the first time we've seen that type of stuff on the field. It's just what Kirby Smart is a high profile guy at a place like Georgia talking to an Alabama player. You're going to hear about it, and um, this is going to be interesting. It's the most talented roster in all of college football. Who's going to come in and save this thing and hold it together? What's your thoughts on that? I mean, who's right for this job?
That's probably what I'm scratching my head about
Who
most.
wants to go in behind the goat, dude?
And it's, we've
That
already
sucks.
seen it. It's almost like at the end of the coaching cycle, right? And in the hiring cycle, this happens.
Right.
And people have already found their homes, and maybe that's not permanent because, I look at somebody like Mike Elko and I think that he'd be a great fit. I don't know if Alabama is willing to, if the AD is willing to go out and try and get him before he ends up, officially coaching for Texas A&M.
Yeah.
I think he would be a great fit. I think that Dan Lanning makes the most sense for Alabama, but I don't know if Alabama makes sense for Dan Lanning, because let's look at this another way. Why would you want to follow up in Nick Saban's footsteps at Alabama and have to consistently put out at 11 plus win seasons in the SEC that just got a lot harder
Yeah.
because of scheduling and because of Oklahoma and Texas joining? I think that if I'm Dan, and he's already come out and said, like, guys, I have the best job in the country, out in
Right.
Oregon. I get to rule the, essentially, I'm paraphrasing. If I'm Dan Lanning, I'm looking at it and I'm saying, I get to rule the West Coast, right? I have a national brand. I have Nike, and you have all the backing of Phil Nike, and what he wants to do is win a national championship.
Oh, and not to
So
mention all the riches of Scotland because they're getting $100 million a year starting here in a couple years.
Yep. So I think
Yeah.
that if I'm Dan Lanning, it doesn't make sense to go to Alabama, but he would be a great fit for Alabama. Obviously, people are going to point to Dabo Swinney. I know a lot of Alabama fans don't want to hear that, but he's also a pretty good fit for Alabama considering he went to school there. And look, that's another. There aren't many coaches who have won multiple national championships in the college football playoff era, right? So he would be a decent fit. Steve Sarkisian makes some sense, but why would you leave Texas? It's kind of like the Oregon situation. I don't know that you can find a better spot. I think that what you have to really look at is in the scope of college football. What is Alabama now that Nick Saban's not there? Is it a top 5 job in college football? I don't know. I don't know that that answer is yes, because what makes it a top 5 spot? Or did Nick Saban make it a top 5 spot?
Did anybody think it was top 5 before he got there? I
No,
don't think so.
it
I
wasn't
sure as
top
hell
10.
didn't.
It wasn't even a top 10 job, you know.
Yeah.
Um, all the history, all that stuff, it doesn't geographically, it doesn't pay like geographically that school doesn't make a whole lot of sense, right? Georgia does because geographically it's in the state of Georgia and there's a hotbed. But
Yeah.
Alabama, as good as that state is in football, which there's some good talent that comes out of it, you've also got to share that state with Auburn. And you've
Yeah.
got LSU on the other side of you. Texas is
Well,
right down the road. I mean,
no offense to our West Coast fans or anything, but there's also, you have to compare living in Oregon or living in Alabama, though. And I mean, I'm a country boy. I'm not from the West Coast, so I'm speaking from no experience here, but I would rather live in Alabama.
right.
There's something to be said for that. And there's no building that has to go on. I mean, he can come in literally right off the rip and bring his system, probably bring some players with him, because obviously the Oregon players will be free to transfer if he leaves, and he can bring some with him. I think it makes a lot of sense. And look, again, I'm no expert on Oregon. Never even been to that state. I've had no reason to go to Oregon. I like the Oregon Ducks. I like watching them, but nothing against Oregon. But from what I hear, from what I've heard on a couple of different occasions, and this is all grapevine talk, but I don't know that his family absolutely is in love with being out there.
Mhm.
So I'm wondering if it doesn't translate to some talks being had. Alabama was paying Nick Saban $11.4 million a year. Dan Lanning, I know, is not getting paid that because I know Nick Saban was the highest paid. So they've got all the money in the world to pay, and I think it's going to come down to Dan Lanning deciding whether or not he wants to follow up the goat. I mean, that's pretty tough stuff. It's like following up the best act on America's Got Talent, and they get the gold buzzer, and it's like,
Mhm.
holy shit! Now I got to go do stand up comedy out here. Like, I'm not going to win. There's nothing. There's no way I can win this. And that's what this job feels like to me. It feels like you're going up after the golden buzzer performance, and
Mhm.
it's going to take one hell of a performance and one hell of a
The-
strong-headed and strong-minded person to come in and take over that system.
And speaking of strong-headed and strong-minded, doesn't Lane Kiffin make sense then?
I've said it. That's been my
Because
one
he
that
does
I've
not give
gone
a
to.
shit. He does not give a shit what the
No,
fans think. Um,
no,
and he might win. He might average 10 wins a season at Bama, but I think that kind of makes sense for both sides in a way.
yeah.
Um,
Already
other
familiar with the
than
program. Worked for the last regime. Won a natty
yeah,
there. Um, it's got talent to pull from at Ole Miss. I mean, this is the best transfer portal class ever, probably. And if you take away the fact they lost Judkins, we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But that's been my go-to guy the whole time, because you're right. He doesn't give a damn, dude. He does
mm-mm,
not give a damn. He's used to being under the pressure. And you talk about winning 10 games, he's doing it at Miss.
yeah,
Doing it at Ole Miss. I mean,
yeah,
in the SEC West amongst Nick Saban. Now Nick Saban's gone. You got a brand new coach at A&M. You've got a
yeah.
second-year coach at Auburn.
Well,
Nick
and
Saban
to
can or Coach Kiffin can come in and be the man right off the bat.
Well, and to what gives me pause about some of these coaches is like, man, look at how much they've done in the transfer portal, specifically Lane Kiffin. But if he leaves his school, well, those players now have 30 days to come with him.
Yeah.
So that's not really a negative, anymore like it once was. Same thing with Dan Lanning. Another one that I don't think is a great geographic fit, but um, somebody that I think would be a good fit is Kalen DeBoer. Put
Yeah.
him, put that head coach, and plant him in Tuscaloosa, and put a surrounding cast around him of coaches and coordinators who understand the Southeastern Conference footprint, and get Grubbs over,
Mhm.
as your offensive coordinator. That's a scary Alabama in my opinion. But it's kind of him, Dan Lanning, Steve Sarkeesian. That's about, as a Georgia fan, those are the only three coaches that go and fill that role. And I say, oh man, they're going to be just as good as ever. Nobody else in America, I think, can fill that role. And without skipping a beat, I guess is
What
my
about
point.
Bill Belichick? I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
He's
there you
about to get
go.
fired. So
Golly, that would be
wouldn't that be
pretty
some shit?
wild.
Alabama gets rid of Nick Saban and brings in Bill Belichick.
Brings in another NFL coach, and he wins 6 more championships. No,
uh,
yeah, it's a wild time, but I'm super interested to see where this goes, and what the recruits think, what his
well,
players think, and where, because there's got to be a slide of talent from Alabama, and two, if I'm Alabama as a program, when do you make the hire? Do you wait 30 days or wait till like the 29th day and then make the hire?
I
Or do
feel
you
like
bring
they
him in
already know.
right away and try to retain what you've got on the roster? Um, it's tough, and this AD has got his work cut out for him. Look, he's been the AD since 2017, never had to deal with this. Went 7 years, never had to deal with a career defining hire. Well, now here it is. This is going to make or break him.
Yeah. Well, hey, if you're watching the show right now, we thank you so much for doing that. And if you would drop us a comment and give us your opinion on this and tell us what you think. And we hope that you'll subscribe to the channel or at least consider it. We love talking college football year round, and this is just one of the reasons. Here we are on January 10th, and we're talking big time college football. And as relevant as if the season was going on. Kind of just close up on Nick Saban there. He led the Tide to 9 Southeastern Conference championships, won his first national title at Alabama with a 14-0 season in 2009. And titles came again in 11, 12, 15, 17, and 20. He also won the SEC with LSU in 2001 and 2003 and a national title over there. Just the GOAT, absolute GOAT until further notice. 297 and 71 as a college head coach, period.
Yeah.
And that's at Toledo, Michigan State, LSU, and Alabama. Um, yeah, he is the greatest coaches right now and the greatest of all time, no doubt about that.